Tom Campbell, who is now with us telephonically. Good morning, Sir Tom.
Good morning, Big Hen. I apologize. I had my phone on silence. I was in Greenville last night. I went to visitation of our mutual friend Tom Mallison.
Oh, did you?
And I put my phone on silence. And golly, what a huge crowd of people coming to pay respects to a really, really fine person, and Francis and the family. And it was just it was touchy.
Yeah, and I'm glad they finally identified the guy who caused the accident. Haven't charged him yet, but man, I tell you, the whole thing is just frustrating for those. If you knew Tom Mallett, we've lost another great human being. Just a
not only that, but a
terrific
great
guy.
Broadcaster. I mean,
No
Tommy,
doubt.
Since early life, Tommy's been in love with jazz, in addition to Francis and East Carolina. And I mean, to think about the fact that for 28 years he got in his car and drove to New Bern to do a jazz show on radio every Sunday night for 6 hours. I mean, man, that's love.
Yeah. Started right here on one of our stations on 94.3 back in the old days, on the WRQR days, and probably during the old Carl Venters days.
Yes, sir. It was indeed.
Well, it's good to hear your voice. First of all, let's tell folks what's happening with NC Spin. I know you've got some news with regard to when the show is going to air here, and I'm actually excited about it because not only I'm sorry that you're leaving WITN, but I'm happy that you're going to be on earlier in the morning. Are you not?
Yes.
What time are you going to be on and where?
8 a.m., and our new stations are Fox Eastern Carolina. It's Fox 8 and Fox 14.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're very happy. We started off the first TV station we expanded to in the network was WCTI many years ago. So we're back sort of with the same company now.
Right.
We had a great relationship with Gray Broadcasting, and sorry to see them decide to begin doing their own public affairs programming, and wish them well with it. But we're also very excited about being on Fox in Eastern Carolina.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're going to be doing on IT. Are they going to do something locally, or is it going to be something they're doing from afar? I guess we'll find out.
All we were told was that they are going. Gray Broadcasting is going to be producing their own programming.
Okay,
and that's all I know.
Well, you do a great service for the state with NC Spin. I'll tell you, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it, and without that I mean, I'm addicted to it. I have to. It's part of my Sunday routine. If I don't catch it after church or DVR it, if I'm at church, I will go and watch it online. I have to watch it every week because I have to know what's going on. And you have the movers and shakers and people that know what's going on in state government. So let's talk.
Except for one.
What's that?
Except for one person, and that's the Big Hen.
Oh yeah.
When are you going to give up this gig with the Board of Governors and come back to us, Henry?
You know what? I miss doing the show. It was a lot of fun doing the show, but you and I both know it's probably not a good idea.
No, it is not. We decided the minute you were appointed, we decided we weren't going to put you in that position, and it was the right decision. It's one of those where it's the right decision to make, but it's not the decision you want to make.
Right. Well, I knew.
But as soon as you're off the Board of Governors, by the way, we've gotten clearance now. We're going to this week we're going to air show number 880.
Wow.
And we've gotten clearance from Capital Broadcasting to do 1,000 shows. So you got 2.5 more years to get off the Board of Governors and come back to us.
That could happen. we'll talk offline. All right. So let's talk about state government. Of course, topic.
What's to talk about? Nothing's going on.
Well, maybe something. I don't know.
Behind the scenes.
The Speaker of the House. Speaker of the House tweeted out yesterday that he is hoping that they'll be finished with a budget by Wednesday. And that's pretty optimistic. You don't hear much optimism coming out of the Senate ever. So Tim Moore's been the best source of information, although it hadn't always been accurate. But it looks like they might be closing in on it. News Observer this morning covering the 6 issues that seem to still be the sticking point: teacher assistants, driver's ed, all the stuff we've been talking about forever. Where do you think it stands?
Well, I think it's all right. My honest opinion is there's a bunch of egos standing in the way between us and the state budget, and they're like little kids on a playground. I'm going to get my way, so I'm going to get my way. Okay, driver's ed. How difficult would it be for you and me to sit down and resolve this issue?
What is the problem with the driver's ed thing? I mean, was driver's ed broken? Why are we having to revisit how we're doing driver's ed?
Henry, I think there was a lot of evidence and some concern that it was being unevenly taught and that it was not being carefully enough controlled and regulated. You know, I was among the very first students to ever take driver's ed. I'll never forget it. James E. Rogers, who was the band director at Rose High School, taught driver's ed as a summer gig to pick up a little extra money. And we had a lot of classroom. We had a lot of riding with other students as they drove, and then some driving time ourselves. I think in general there's some concern that there's not enough actual behind-the-wheel experience for these kids. We've turned the whole process over to commercial and professional companies like Lucas Transportation up in the Raleigh-Durham area.
And Tony Moore's driving school here.
Yeah, and so, I mean, what you get is sort of uneven education and uneven experiences among the kids. Mm-hmm. I do think there is some evidence that, for whatever the reason, the number of accidents involving teens, and particularly the fatalities involving teens, has dropped. Now, I credit a fair amount of that to the graduated licensing program that the legislature wisely instituted several years ago. Teens don't care for it much, but as the grandfather of children who have been going through this graduated program, I can tell you that even though I think the kids fudge and the parents fudge on how much actual time they drive behind the wheel and with supervision and yada, yada, I do think it's helped cut down on accidents. And I think that there is evidence out there as to how to go about doing driver's ed in a better way with more behind-the-wheel experience, better supervision. So why in the name of everything are we still sitting around arguing about this in August?
Well, they say, and you know, it's whatever they do, it just seems like they can't do it this year anyway. I mean, they were talking about having the community colleges take it over, and we had the chairman of the State Community College Board, my friend Scott Shook, in here 2 weeks ago saying, "Hey, we couldn't do it if we wanted to."
The whole thing shows the lunacy that we've got in state government right now. And you know, we used to grouse and complain, and you remember for years we'd fuss about how the Democrats were running state government, and there were a lot of us, me included, who felt like, okay, the Republicans are going to take charge. We're going to get this done in a more business-like manner. And in 2011, they came in and they passed a budget before the July 1st timeline. But ever since then, they've gotten into the same rut with the same problems the Democrats had. They're not any better. I mean, this is absurd, and you know, it's not. This is not the way to run a government. I think, first of all, we need to move the budget date from July 1 to January 1. By gum, if they can't get a budget passed by January 1, by December 31st, that's just absolute. I think we ought to also say to them, as of July 1, your per diems are cut. You don't get anything after that. Yeah. You can stay there just as long as you want to, but the state ain't paying for this. You know?
But it's not about I agree with you, but it's not about money. It's about egos. It's like you said. I mean, if the Republicans would work together, if we could get the guys in the House to work with the guys in the Senate to work with the guys in the House and the governor, I think Pat McCrory would have about a 60% approval rating right now.
Well, and, you know, I feel sorry. You know how I feel about Pat McCrory. I like him a lot, and I think he's really working hard. trying to keep this bunch. It's like herding cats, I think. But, so far as it goes, it wouldn't make any difference who was governor right now. The Republicans, as they are now constituted in the legislature, seem to want to eat their own.
Yep.
And I don't get this. I don't understand it. Democrats always fought amongst themselves, but they typically did it in private, and they presented a fairly united front in public. But this bunch doesn't even attempt to present any kind of civility toward each other.
Well said. I can't argue with any of it. Now, as far as the idea we were talking last night that we're hearing we know for sure that there are going to be some interesting announcements coming after the session is over. And I know some people have been waiting to make their announcement that they're going to run for this or run for that, or maybe not run for this or not run for that based on where every individual is, based on where the session is and trying to finish the session. And, if they move all of the primary elections to March 15th, which it looks like is a real possibility at this point, if they don't get out of there until October 1st, and people need to understand, when the budget is finished, if they do finish it next week, which the continuing resolution ends on September 18th, and I kind of feel like they will. You don't think they will?
I think they will, yes.
I think they will too, but people need to understand, they may have 3 or 4 more weeks of work left to do.
Oh, there is easily 3 or 4 more weeks to close down the session. Not only that, the thing most people don't understand is, okay, so they passed this. Now all of a sudden the different agencies of state government have got to receive the budget, which takes a week or two for them to get it codified and get it over to the various agencies. Then they've got to begin implementing the budget. You're November before most state agencies are really going to be able to start enacting whatever budget it is that they pass. By that time, we are, 4 months, 5 months into the state year?
Mm-hmm.
It's an absurd
but in addition to that, think about it from their political perspective. If they don't get out of there till October 1st, which now looks like a real possibility, probably a probability, and the primary is March 15th. Think about it, that's 5.5 months.
Yeah,
they got to get out and raise money. They got to campaign.
Raise money. Yeah.
I mean, it's a disaster for their campaigns.
Well, what do you think about this? I wrote a little blog on this last week. What do you think about this idea of having a single primary in March? I think after reflecting on it, I'm not so keen on this idea, and I'll tell you why. Number one, there's going to be a tremendous amount of interest in North Carolina on the presidential primary, and I think there should be. I think we need to really reflect on all of the characters who are running for both the Republican and Democratic presidential nominations, and I think that ought to be the singular focus. But secondly, and I said this, and this is going to sound like I'm trying to favor broadcasters, but there's only a certain amount of airtime. There's only a certain amount of advertising time. There's only a certain amount of news time that's going to be able to be gathered and given during the presidential primary.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know that the big interest is going to be the presidential primary, not the statewide primary elections. So as a result, these guys get hidden. They don't have the money. The money's going to all be sucked up by the presidential candidate. So we're going to be voting for our council of state, for our governors, for our legislators in these primary elections. And in many instances won't know who they are, won't have any idea in the world what they stand for or what their platforms are.
Yep.
They won't be able to get any airtime because it's all going to be gotten by the federal elections because of equal time. So, I mean, it's going to be, I think it's a bad idea. I think it costs $6 million to hold a second primary election. I'm not keen on having it in May. I think that's too early. But I have been convinced that if you wait and hold it in July, that nobody turns out. Mm-hmm. The only good thing I think about this March 15th single primary election is there will be a big turnout.
Well, you just convinced me. I think you're right. I hadn't thought through it as thoughtfully as you obviously have. I'd love the idea of the March 15th presidential primary. I think North Carolina has been an also-ran and an afterthought in recent.
For too many years.
Yeah. And we, we're the 9th largest state on our way to being the 7th largest state. We need to have a voice in who the presidential candidates are going to be. And so
$6 million is not an insignificant sum of money. I understand that.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this, if these clowns would get their jobs done and in the legislative session in June and July like they should have, we'd have a couple of million left over that we didn't spend.
That's true. And, $6 million, I mean, and this
chicken feed. In the $21 billion state budget is chicken feed.
This will be a point on which I could very easily be criticized, and I wouldn't blame you if you did. But in the greater scheme of things, $6 million ain't much money in the state budget.
Let me say this. Is it worth $6 million to be able to take a breath and find out who you're voting for and what they might do after they get in office?
Yeah. Now,
it's a fairly decent investment.
We just made every teacher's assistant in North Carolina mad by saying that. All right.
Why is that?
Well, because, any amount of money that's spent on anything other than teachers, if they cut teachers' assistants, that's going to be criticized and probably should be.
The teachers' assistants are going to get their money. This is one of the big ego things that's going on with the Senate and the House right now. Here's the lunacy of all of this, Henry. For years and years and years, Republicans told us we believe in smaller government. We believe in a government that is closest to the people. Let the local people make most of the decisions. What in the world is going on in Raleigh right now? This is Washington redone. I mean, they're trying to make all the decisions.
Tom, I'm going to close with this. I think it's about 3 people.
I think you're right.
I think it's about 3 people and I could call them by name, and you could too.
I could too.